Good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to this session of the AgrAbility webinar series. Our topic today is on cultural competency, and we're going to be receiving an overview on that topic from Dr. Lupita Fabregas. She is currently a clinical assistant professor in the College of Human Sciences at Oklahoma State University as a multicultural and community engagement specialist. So if you're wondering about the background on your slides, I believe that is the Oklahoma State University Cowboy, in case there was any question about that. Before we start with the actual presentation today, just a few quick webinar instructions for those that have not participated before. Of course, you will need speakers or headphones in order to hear the presentation, as we are not using a phone connection. If you would like to check your sound, you may do that through the meeting menu at the top left and the audio setup wizard if you're having any audio issues. If you have any questions during the presentation about the presentation itself, you are welcome to type those in the chat window and then hit the return icon. Also, during the question and answer period at the end of the session, if you do have a microphone, you may use the raise hand icon, which is at the top of your screen on the top bar. And if you do have that microphone, we will attempt to activate it, and you may ask your question verbally. At the end, before we start our question and answers, we do have 4 quick survey questions. And for this particular webinar, our presenter has also requested that we ask some questions of you during the presentation to get your feedback that she can respond to. So we'll have some extra polls during the session. We are recording this and archiving it on our website, and that link will be available at the end during the question and answer period also, and you may click on that now if you'd like to open that window and bookmark that. If you have any problems in terms of technical issues, we ask that you type those in the chat window. If for some reason you're not able to use the chat window, you can email us at agrability@agrability.org. That is currently also listed in the chat window if you want to open a message to that just in case. A few issues that we know have occurred in the past. If you're having echo, that means you're probably logged in more than once, and so you should just simply log out at least one time. If we're disconnected with our presenter, who is at a remote site today, then just please hang on and we will reconnect as soon as possible. And if you are disconnected as a participant, please just log in again. For those of you that are not familiar with AgrAbility, and I know we have several that are from new organizations that we have not seen before on our webinar, we are sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and our focus is on helping farmers, ranchers, and other agricultural workers with any kind of disabling condition. Every AgrAbility project is a partnership between a land-grant university and at least one disability services organization. Currently, we do have 20 projects covering 22 states around the country. There is also one national AgrAbility project, and that is led by Purdue's Breaking New Ground Resource Center. We partner with organizations including Goodwill of the Finger Lakes, the Arthritis Foundation Heartland Region, the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and Colorado State University. And if you're interested in more information about AgrAbility, please feel free to visit us at agrability.org. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Fabregas, and I'm going to close my camera out, and she will begin hers, and then I will return during the question and answer period.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much for this kind presentation, and I can recognize some of the names in the participants. So welcome to this seminar. I just hope that we can have a good time and try to learn a little bit about becoming intercultural competent. I'm really sorry about my accent. I think that you are going to have an intercultural competence experience here with me. I'm going to try to speak slowly so you can understand me. If you have any problem, just send a message, and I'm sure that we are going to find a solution. So the first thing that I would like to ask you is if you have received any formal training in intercultural competence during the last year. So you can answer so we can have an idea. Wow, this is interesting. Okay, around 60% haven't received any formal intercultural competence training. So I'm going to try to give you a general information, and we are going to talk about some specific groups that I know that you have been working with. But most of all, I would like to give you my general kind of idea of what I think we should be working with in extension and when we serve the population in the United States. So that's going to be my goal, and thank you very much for attending this seminar. So I want to start, and I know that you know that monocultural environments do not exist anymore. We don't work in an environment when we are all the same. We work in an environment that the difference are the most important thing. So we cannot prepare anything and pretend that that training or that talk or that service that we provide is going to be good enough for everybody in our state. So we are expected to be intercultural competent professionals, and we are expected to serve all the population in our state. So we need to figure out a way to serve them in a interculturally competent way. So let's start with some basic definitions, and I would like to tell you that I talk with my students here, and sometimes they say, I don't have a culture because the United States is a melting pot and I don't have a culture. That's absolutely wrong. We all have a culture. Our culture is who we are. Since we were born, we start receiving information, and that information becomes something that we are going to be sharing all our lives. So the way that we believe, our costumes, our language, the way that we talk, everything is related to our culture. So we have a culture, and it's important for us to recognize what is our culture. I would like to ask you a question. For example, how often do you work with people from different cultures? Wow. The 60% of us work with people from different cultures every day. Those numbers are very impressive. So you know that the cultural difference are kind of an iceberg. And I like this analogy that Peterson does, because I really think that the things that we see are just the tip of the iceberg. Sometimes a lot of people tell me that I don't look like Mexican, and sometimes I tell them I might not look like Mexican, but I can assure you that I think like Mexican, I eat that Mexican, I believe like Mexican, I'm a true Mexican. So sometimes we kind of are working with people from different cultures, but we see them only for the things that we can perceive with our sense. And that's not just the culture. The culture is what we can see, and we can all the things that we cannot see. So when we decide a training or approach a person, we always need to be aware of the things that we cannot see. And the values and the beliefs of certain cultures, I think, is the most important part of the culture. So what is a multicultural environment? This is very important because a lot of people think that a multicultural environment is only about the language. or it's only about the nationality or the place where we were born, and that a culture is everything. For example, all the genders, if you are a female, if you are a male, you have a culture. All the ages. I don't know you, but I have a teenager, and I can tell you that he's from another culture. I grew up with no cell phone, with not a lot of information. We didn't have internet at that time. And now my son, I think that he rather lose me than lose his cell phone. So he is from another culture. Another thing is our race, our ethnicity, our economic status cannot be, is not the same to be talking with a millionaire than to be talking with a person that is surviving through maybe food stamp or through the WIC program. So we are from different cultures. Our sexual orientation, our the language, our nationality, and our abilities. That make us from different cultures. I recently add these things because I think that a different culture is about different generations. We are going to talk a little bit more during this presentation about this. The level of education, if we need to talk with people with a graduate degree, is not the same thing that preparing a training for people that didn't finish high school, for example. Another thing that we need to notice is that the people that were raised in a rural environment is from one culture. The people that were raised in an urban environment is from another culture. And I will add the one thing that for me is very important, that different cultures are the ones with people that had different opportunities in life. It's not the same thing to grow up in a place where you have food every day, where you have the opportunity to go to the school, the opportunity to have experiences that are related to your age, than people that were born and they have to work since they were very young, or they didn't have the opportunity to go to any college or any school, or they have to work 10 or more hours a day. So I hope that you understand that the culture is much more than just the nationality. Now, let's talk a little bit about two things. One thing is living in a multicultural environment. Here in the university, as in many universities around the United States, we are very proud that we have more people from more than 100 countries in our university. This makes us a multinational university, multicultural university. We just talk about the place where we were born. But being in a multicultural environment is not the same thing and knowing how to live in a diverse society. Let me explain you a little bit more about this. What do you understand the difference between multicultural and between a multicultural and in a diverse environment? Help me to answering this question. Thank you very much for your answer. I think this is a very important part of my presentation, and I want to be absolutely clear that that we are in the same channel. I understand that multicultural environment is just the presence of people that are different. Can be different genders, can be different nationalities, can be different generations. But diversity is knowing how to relate to those who are different from me. Let me give you an example. If I go to the student union to have lunch here in the university, I can see a multinational environment or multicultural environment. I can see people from Asia. I can see people from the United States. I can see people, African Americans, for example. I can see Native Americans. But each group of students are sitting in a different table. So that make me think that we live in a multicultural environment, but we don't live in a diverse society. Each member of the groups that we were talking about, they are by themselves and they relate to people that are like them. And I don't blame them because that's a natural thing to do. To be able to live in a diverse society, we have to make an effort. And the effort has to be to develop an intercultural competency. And the intercultural competency has been defined for many people, but I like this definition because it's my ability to relate and interact with people that are different. And that's very, very important. Being in a multicultural environment don't make me being intercultural competent. If I go to an study abroad experience, but I go with my friends, I speak English the whole time, I eat burgers because I don't like the food from the country, when I come back, I didn't develop any intercultural competence. I just came and have an experience, but I came back and I really don't have any mm, I didn't gain any intercultural competency. And that's something that happens very often in the environment that we are in. So why do we have to develop this competency? I really would like to see all of us feeling good interacting with people from different cultures. It's a two-way situation. I want you to feel good interacting with people from the different cultures, but I also would like the people from other cultures feeling okay interacting with me. And that's very important because it's a two-way situation. I might go and teach a class in a rural environment, and I can perceive that everybody understood me and they were really happy. But the thing is that did I ask them how they were feeling when I was talking? Remember, it's not just the way that I feel, but it's the way that the people that are receiving the message feel. Okay. Oh, I cannot find mine. Okay. So how can we explain the way that we can develop this competency? And maybe some of you have heard about this. This continuum was developed in base of the developmental model of intercultural sensitivity by Milton Bennett. But these are 5 stages, and each one of us go through these stages in order to become intercultural competent. For example, when you are in denial, you only recognize what you can see. Comments like they look very different, they dress very different, they eat very different are very common in this stage. In this stage, we don't do any effort to interact with the people that are different. We only see them and we know that they are different, but we don't perceive any interaction. When we move to the second stage, that is polarization, we kind of make a line between them and me. I can see them, but I cannot relate my behavior to their behavior. I think that they are like them, and I'm like me. I normally find myself judging what they do is wrong, what they do is not right. The things that I do, those are the things that are right. The way that we, for example, raise our kids are the right way to do it. In other cultures, they really protect their children and they are not right. The right or wrong consideration is very popular. When I came to the United States, I remember that I thought that the Mexican culture was the only right culture in the world. I remember thinking why the kids are leaving their parents when they are 18 years old. In Mexico, we normally leave our house the day that we get married. So ask me now, after 12 years of living here, if I would like my son that is 21 years old living with me right now. Of course not. I changed. I kind of recognized that what I was doing was okay in Mexico, but it's okay also to do the things in a way that you do it here. So it's not them and us anymore. We are here in the same boat. When you move to minimization, you start finding things that we do in common. That things that maybe we are different in these things, but we are also, we share these values. For example, a family value. For example, the way that we work so hard to bring the bacon to our houses, the way that we relate to our kids. We start finding commonalities. And when we move to another stage is when we start thinking that even though I'm this way, I can accept this cultural difference and I can change my behavior when I'm with people from other cultures. Let me give you an example. When I'm with my friends that speak Spanish and are from Mexico, I behave in a way. When I'm with my American friends, I behave in a different way. I try not to be that loud. I try to respect their space, for example. I try to be on time. And when I'm with my Mexican friends, we hug, we kiss, because that's the way that we relate to each other. And it's important to learn the things that we do in common and the things that we do different, and to learn how to change according to the group that I'm working with. We cannot design a training, just one training for everybody, because we have to take care of the cultural differences. I'm going to ask you right now another question. In what stage of the continuum do you believe that you are? Thank you very much for your answer. I kind of know that you work with people that are different. So I'm not surprised that you are in that stage of the continuum. Let me show you the goal of the university, the college that I work for, and the goal of Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service is to move everybody to the acceptance level of the continuum. We are doing the assessment and we are trying to design trainings to move the people to the acceptance level. So we are starting this project. Maybe in a year I'm going to be able to share with you how was it. So let's move on and let's try to do some practical things that might help you during the job. Okay, so why do we have to move to the acceptance stage of the continuum? Because we need to serve the entire population of our state. I cannot sign for this job and say, okay, I'm only going to be working with these people, or I'm going to be working with these people. I have to work with everybody. I have to offer the services to everybody. So the reality is that I'm going to have to learn how to become intercultural competent. So what can we do? Where should we start to develop our skills to become intercultural competent? I'm going to give you three general tips that might help you to start working and developing your intercultural competence. The first thing that we need to do is to understand your own culture. I need to understand that you have a lot of things that make you different from another person. So how can we start understanding our culture? I found this, and I'm sure that many of you have worked on this. Is the John Hopkins diversity wheels, and it's a very good exercise when you start discovering your cultures. When I do an intercultural competence training, the first thing that I do is I try try to tell the people that they need to recognize your culture. The thing that we do is we write a piece of paper and we start with, hello, my name is Lupita. I'm 50 years old. I'm a female. I was born in Mexico. I'm a Hispanic, and I try to write who I am. Let's answer one question. And how can you write 10 things about your own person and culture? Let's try to answer the question. Okay. If this is a very good exercise if you have the chance to do it. Just take a piece of paper and start using this wheel to describe your culture. Who are you? Why is this so important? Because sometimes, for example, sometimes we want to be working with people the same, as I have been telling during this presentation, we want to do the things the same way. And if we have different audiences, we have to do the things in a different way. So it's important for you to know who you are. Maybe compare this wheel with your co-workers might help you. It's not the same thing to have a co-worker that just left the university and just graduate from the university than work with me that I have 30 years of experience, for example. It's not the same thing to be working with a teenager than to be working with a veteran that just came back from Afghanistan. We need to recognize that we are different. One thing that is important for me is that being different is okay. And sometimes when we immigrate or we work with the people from another cultures here in the United States, they want to make such a big effort to fit in your culture that they want to give up their own culture so you can welcome them or they can be part of the group. And that's a big mistake. Remember that we are who we are, and it's just so different to change our cultures. We are not going to change. Maybe we are going to pretend that we change, but deep down, we are going to be who we are all our lives. So be careful because you are members of a dominant society. So you, when you work with people from a different cultures, just be sure that they are not pleasing you the whole time, that you recognize when they please you and when they really want to do the things. So be careful with that because that might be a very different situation. Let me show you something that I use in a training with teacher assistants from different cultures. And we talk about the American culture, and we talk about your language, that is English. We talk about your religion. We talk about your style. For example, the students are very informal in college, or the professors are very responsible when we come to the university. But we also talk about the things that are important for a lot of Americans. And one of the things is the sports, for example, are the sports, or the food, or the holidays. So remember, you are going to work with people that are different, but they need to know also anything or all the things about your culture. I really believe if you immigrate to another country, you need to learn their culture. I'm not saying that you have to do everything that they do in order to become welcome, like I was telling, but you need to learn the culture. For example, as a professor, if you are an international professor and you are teaching a class, You need to know who won the football game on Saturday. Why? Because that's a very important part of the American culture and might be a really good way to communicate with your students. You need to know that 4th of July is a holiday. You need to know that Labor Day is a holiday. And the same way, the other way around. I have a friend that has a business in Tulsa, and he called me because he had problems to assistant problems with his Mexican employees. And I asked him, when do you want them to work? And he said, it's like, I believe that it was God Friday, for example. That's a very important holiday if you are a Catholic. So you have to be aware of that, and you have to negotiate those kinds of things with the people that you work with. It's a win-win situation if you respect cultural differences. Okay. The second point is learning about the culture. Learning about the other cultures. It's important that you recognize that we are different, but also that you can have a perception of where are the differences. It's not the things that we see. Remember that will be a denial situation. Is are all the things that we perceive. For example, let me show you a map. According to the Lewis model, this is the world, and each color represents a different culture. So I'm going to show you a triangle, and I'm going to try to discuss. But check the map and see why are we all so different. Check this triangle and ask try to answer the question. In the Lewis model, in what group do you belong? Are you for a multi-active? Wow, this is very interesting. Well, we have 70% of the group in the 75. Okay. Wow. So we have people from Latin America, and we have people from like the United States, I believe, and some people from Asia. So check this. Now we are going to talk about why are we so different. When I remember, when you are working with a culture, it's a good idea to try to figure out in what part of the triangle they are. Why? Because let me show you some difference. This slide, I don't know why it has a little bit of problems in the top, but these are some of the characteristics of each one of the cultures. I'm going to talk just a couple of examples that I want you to take consideration. And one is, for example, the way that we talk. In a linear active society, the people talk half of the time. In a red society, multi-active society, like my society, we talk most of the time. And in a yellow society, the people from Asia, they listen almost all the time. So imagine that we have a meeting with people from three countries. We have a meeting between one guy from the United States, one guy from, let's say, Argentina, and another lady from Asia. Who do you think that is going to control the conversation? Of course, the multi-active member of the society, because they are going to try to talk all the time. This is important when you have a training and you have a group of people from different nationalities. What can you do? For example, since you are going to be the professor or the moderator of the conversation, you need to set the rules since the beginning. And this is very important. When you are working with people from different cultures, have been talking about respecting cultural differences. But since we have to work together, we have to be aware of the cultural differences, but we have to negotiate with the group the way that we are going to be working and set some rules. I'm going to give you an example. If I know that your sense of time is different than my sense of time, I'm going to talk with everybody and say, okay, let's say that we are going to have 5 minutes tolerance, and then we are going to start. With those 5 minutes, you are going to be respecting the people that are going to be on time and respecting the people that the time frame is not as important. For the talking, for example, you can find a way of giving the opportunity to everybody, for giving the opportunity to each one of the groups to talk. If you want, for example, the Americans to talk, you need to let them talk in a space, for example. And until they finish, the rule is going to see you cannot interrupt them until they are finished. That might set the rule to work with people from different cultures. For example, if you have people from Asia, be sure that you ask questions, because if you don't ask a direct question, they're never going to talk with you. So you have to study the people that you are working with and then try to put together some rules so all the members of that group can feel comfortable working with you. Okay. So I put together some cultural characteristics that you might find interesting with the group that we are working with. For example, if we are in a group with males and females, here are some differences that we can be working with and you have to be aware of. For example, when you are working with females, we are in people that we think in a global way. If you are working with males, they think in a linear way. So you have to be aware of that when you want them to work together. It's not the same thing to be doing one thing at a time, that to be multitasking. So don't ask a male to multitask, but ask a female to multitask. You need to know the difference in order to be an effective instructor or an effective public servant. For example, one of the things that made me laugh is like the last thing that you might find interesting. For example, the women validate the relationship through communication. And the men validate the relationship through activities. So when you are with your partner, for example, and you want them to be explaining to you the way that they feel, your partner is a male, you are going to have problems. If you are trying to, for example, your girlfriend, if you have a female partner, to enjoy with you, for example, a competition, an outdoor competition, you might have a problem. And I know that we cannot do a generalization, but these are gender characteristics that you might find useful when you work with different cultures. Here is another one. Have you heard about these traditional baby boomers, Generation X and millennial generations? These are very important because, for example, I'm a baby boomer. So I have some characteristics that my son that is a millennial or my daughter that is a millennial, they don't have. What are these characteristics? Let me give you some examples that might be. I went to a conference and it was just so interesting that I would like to share with you some of the things that they talk about. I'm sure that you have heard this conversation about the millennials and about all these. Let me just pull out this information. Give me one second. Okay, so you can. I'm sure that you know which one are you, which group do you belong. But for example, the traditionals, they lived through the Great Depression, so they are used to keep track of everything. They don't throw away anything because they live in a in a part of the history that the food was not very the food was like something that you had to take care. They went through the World War II. For example, they hear the radio that is maybe for your kids that are millennials or maybe Generation Xers. It's incredible to be thinking that you can be seated in a living room hearing the radio the whole afternoon. For these traditionals, the core values were loyalty, commitment, a strong hard ethic, patriotism, law and order, respect of authority, patience. It's a different situation, for example, with the boomers. The baby boomers like me, we live through Woodstock, for example, the concert. We lived through the Vietnam War. We live for all this peace and love. We saw, for example, the Watergate scandal. We saw, for example, when the the Americans were hostage from the Iranians, and we saw this women liberation in our lives. So we are different than we in general are very optimistic. We are idealistic. We find personal gratification. We want promotions and recognitions, but we want to compete. Let me just go through for example, imagine that you have to design a training for guys that were born in 1970, for example. What you can do? The Xers, for example, they lived through the Oklahoma City bombing. That was the first terrorist attack in the U.S. soil, for example. They live where the Clinton scandal. They start realizing that the technology is a tool that they can be using. And what can I say about the millennials? We have here in the university now the millennials, and those are students that find everything so easy. Everything they have, all of them have these smartphones, and their conversations are just so different than the way that we talk. I was like talking with a career services professional, and she was telling me that the students are having a hard time with a face-to-face interview. They do very good, for example, when they have to send an email or when they have to send a resume or when they have the interview by Skype, but they don't do very good like face-to-face. So you have to consider that when you are working with people that are different. Another thing that I would like to add is about the social class. We are from different from different cultures, and I pull this out. I don't know if you can see it very well, but is the difference between all these people in the graphic. They are from the middle class, but just check the difference between the the top income from the middle class and the low income from the middle class. So this is what is happening right now. Maybe we are all from a middle class, but the top income against the low income make us super different. So don't think that if you are from the middle class, you are going to be working with middle classers. You are going to be working with people that are like you. Those are different too. Okay. Another thing that I pull out is like the rural against the urban environment. And this is important because if you work with extension people, you normally have to work with both in rural environments and in urban environments. It's not the same thing to be talking with a guy that grew up in a teeny town with 2,000 people, that with a guy that grew up in New York. We need to be aware of those differences. For example, In this kind of difference, for example, is the social mobility in the rural environment is very slow against the social mobility in the urban environment. The population is more homogeneous in a rural environment than in an urban environment. So all those small differences make us be aware of the cultural differences. So I want to ask you now a couple of questions, and one of the questions is, do you feel that you have many cultural commonalities with the people that you work with? Do you think that they are like you, or do you think that they are not like you? Bueno, in general, the majority of the people that you work with, you feel that they are people like you. That makes your job a little bit more easy. But remember the iceberg. You might think that they are like you, but maybe they are people from different cultures and they are like trying to be like you or trying to look like you, but they are not really like you. So you have to be careful with that. The next question is, do you feel that you have many cultural difference with people like you that work with you? Wow. So well, I'm not surprised because I know that you are the kind of people that you work with different communities, that you work with people that are different, and you are you are helping me with this because you are the kind of people that can recognize the cultural commonalities, and you also can recognize the cultural difference. And it's important, that is very, very important. Okay. So the last thing that I want to talk with you is that if you would like to really improve your intercultural competency, you need to create a personal cultural developmental plan. This is a developmental competency, so we're never gonna be not learning anymore. We are learning all the time to become intercultural competent because as you know, there are so many different cultures that it's just so hard to be aware of all the details. For example, I might be very good to work with people from different nationalities, but I'm not very good to be working with people with disabilities, or I'm not very good to be working with people from rural environments. And so you have to find out which are the cultures that you are having problems to work with. And you have to write that down. And you have to make a plan to become intercultural competent in those cultures that you are having problems with. For example, if I'm having problems to relate with the Hispanic population in my state, I need to write that down and try to find a way to relate to them. Because remember that our job is to work with the whole population in our state, not just with one group. So what can I do to improve my intercultural competence in this specific group? We need to create a plan. So who is your cultural targeting group? And what are your cultural stress points? That's the question that you need to ask. I pull this out, for example, it's just about the population in the United States. Of course, remember the definition of multicultural environment, and it's much more than being white or black or Hispanic. But here in the United States, 60% of the population is classified as white, 17% is Hispanic, 12 as black, and 8 as others. So I'm gonna jump one, and I'm gonna go back to that one. So what is my advice to you? The first thing that I really would like you to do is to learn about their culture. Remember, Point number one, you have to write down what is the culture that you are going to be working with and you are having problems. Then you need to learn about their culture. There is not magic that you are going to be able to interact with them in a positive way. You need to read the book. You need to find the cultural difference. You need to talk with a guy that might have more experience that you do working with that group of persons. And then you have to approach them. You have to show them that you care. This is very important because remember that those small groups of the population are just, they don't know what are you thinking about them. So if you show them that you care, I'm sure that you are going to get a positive answer. The point number three is that you need to build a relationship. Most of the cultures are relationship oriented. You need to build a relationship in order to do something or to work together. If you don't have a relationship and you go directly to the task, you are going to perceive that they don't accept the task or they tell you that they do, but they really don't. So take your time and build a relationship. How can you build a relationship? Knowing them and learning about their culture. I have one student, for example, my students here in the university, sometimes I say, okay, where are you from? And they say, I'm from Bangladesh, or I'm from Sri Lanka, or I'm from Argentina. So I tell everybody, pull your cell phone and Google this country, Google Bangladesh, and try to find a smart question to ask to a student from Bangladesh. When you know something about the other people's country or the other people's culture, and you start kind of making this relationship, they are going to show that they are going to perceive that you care. Another thing is that you have to identify the things that you admire from them and identify the things that you do in common and the things that you do in different. Okay, so I know that you have been working with groups like this and you are having some issues to relate to them. So I pull some difference. We are working in something is called Beyond the Stereotypes, and it's a series of documents. This is, for example, for the Hispanic culture. What is the most important stereotypes and what are 10 tips to work with them? So you can work in something like this. That might help you. But for example, for the farm workers, you have to understand, I pull an article that is like the title was very attractive. It says our nation's invisible population. And you have to learn about them. Here are some tips that you might find helpful. For example, from the Amish group, you have to learn their culture in order to approach them, or from the Mennonites. I learned, for example, that there is a big groups of Mennonites in Chihuahua, in the north part of Mexico. So you have even to find like the difference between the Amish and the Mennonites. For example, for the veterans, if you are going to work with them, you need to know what is happening inside their culture. You have to understand them. It's just so hard, but you need to make an effort. So one other thing that I only have a couple of minutes left, and I want you to keep thinking about this and always remember something that I really like. And this that each one of us sees the world with different eyes. So that is why we need to respect the difference. We don't want the people to behave like I do. I don't want the people to be like me. I want to learn how to know them better and to respect the cultural differences. And of course, adapt my training and my behavior in order to respect those cultural differences. Okay, so let me try the last one. Okay, let's try this one. Okay, so here is my advice is try to learn about your culture, try to learn about other people's culture, and try to create a personal plan to develop your intercultural competence. And thank you so much. And I hope that my accent was not very bad. I was looking at the closed caption, and sometimes I make them, I make them have some problems. So thank you very, very much. So Paul, can you help me with the questions?
Thanks very much, Dr. Fabregas, for that excellent presentation. We definitely appreciate your expertise. And at this point, we're going to be doing our 4 poll questions in terms of just getting feedback on the session in general, which we always do. And while we're doing the 4 polls, if you have more questions, please feel free to type those into the chat window. I think we've had a couple that have come up. And again, if you have a web microphone and you want to ask your question verbally, please use the raise hand icon at the top. So our first poll question today just asks about your affiliation. If you could tell us if you belong to one of these categories. We realize that many of you may be part of more than one, but please pick the one that you find most appropriate according to those choices. Cliff, if you could also put up the link to the archive in the question pod. I thought that was there, but apparently it's not. So it looks like we've got a pretty broad representation from different groups today. Appreciate your feedback on that. So Cliff has got our link up on the top. Okay, great. Our next question asks about the information that was shared today. Did you feel that it was valuable and met your expectations? One other thing I'd like to ask is that if you had more than one person viewing at your site and all people were not included on your login, that you'd let us know that there were multiple people and how many there were so we can more accurately record our attendance. Okay, appreciate your feedback on that question. And there are your poll results. Next question asks about the technology that was used today. Did you find it to be effective and usable? If you had any specific issues, we'd appreciate again that you would type those into your chat window pod, and we do our best to troubleshoot those as we can. Okay, it looks like overall people didn't have too many problems. Appreciate your information on that. And then finally, based on today's session, would you attend another session in this series? And just as a save the date, it looks like our next webinar will be happening about the middle of November, and that will be on arthritis pain management. And so if you attended this session, you will receive a notification about the next one. Okay. Again, thank you for your input on that question. Okay, at this point, I'm going to turn things back over to Dr. Fabregas, and again, continue to ask questions in the chat window if you'd like, and we'll have her respond to the ones that are currently available.
Okay, ready? Hi. Okay, I just want to I think that you already, I wanted to ask another question, but I think you already answered that question about the information provided in this where are you going to use this information, the information that we provide in your next seminar or in your next training?
Did you want us to ask this other poll
Yeah.
question?
Can you raise your hand if you are going to use the information provided in this seminar in your next, for example, training or in your next part of your job? Okay, this is a very interesting question because an stereotype is normally, well, it's a generalization about the culture. And it's important that we don't take the stereotypes and try to put them together with the cultural characteristics because those are two completely different things. And a stereotype is like a judgment about the culture. For example, all the Mexicans like tequila. That's an stereotype. You are judging everybody because you know maybe a Mexican that like tequila, for example. A cultural characteristic is more, those are deeper than just like a perception that you can have it with your sense. And the stereotype is something, is a judgment that you do. The cultural characteristics is not a judgment, it's a characteristic that the people have. For example, el, one cultural characteristic, for example, for like the same example for the Mexicans will be they are very family oriented. That's not negative, not a judgment. That's a characteristic. I don't know if I answered your question, but it's a big line. Remember, when you are stereotyping people, you are judging people, and that's a negative statement. I can send you the information. If you want to write down my email address and if you would like to have, have a final document about the Hispanic, but we are working in African Americans and in Native Americans. We would like to have a series of Beyond the Stereotypes, and we are asking the students and we are asking the professors. So if you send me an email, I will be more than happy to share with you this information. My email is Lupita, Lupita, dot Fabregas, Fabregas, at okstate, okstate.edu. Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. When you really, this remember, this moving through this continuum has to be something that the person would like to do. If you are not interested in developing this competence, you're never going to move through the continuum. What happens if you have to work with people that maybe they are in polarization or in denial? You need to, I think, because I have been working with people like that, is I try to point out like maybe making a joke, or maybe not trying to be rude or anything, but when they make a judgment, for example, I try to say, I don't think that all the people is like you are saying. I know people from this culture that they are not like that. Or every time that I try to put out something negative, I try to point out something positive. For example, they are very lazy. And I try to point out, for example, they are interested in different things that the things that we are interested. So try to always point out the positive things about the culture. If they want, for example, to get to know people better, some people, members from the other culture, try to humanize the culture. If they know somebody that is from that culture that can make an impact on them, that might be helpful. I remember I heard a conversation, and I went to a conference in Norman, Oklahoma with a professor, and she was dressing like in a cap and gown, a graduation cap and gown. During the conversation, she took off this gown, and she was wearing an indigenous dress, and she talked with the audience and say, hey, you have a different perception of me if I'm wearing this dress, or if I'm wearing my cap and gown. So you have to show them that all these cultural differences are about perception, and there is no wrong or right. But I understand you. Sometimes you have to work with people that might not be interested in growing as person in their intercultural continuum, but you have to point out the positive things. That's the way that I should do it, that I will do it. Okay, thank you very much for your time and for being so patient with me and my accent. It's just so hard to be working through a webcam instead of person to person. I hope that you enjoy the experience, and I hope that you really make an effort to become more intercultural competent. We need to do this because the people that we serve, deserve to be treated the right way, and to be feeling okay when they work with us. So thank you, and please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any other question. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Dr. Fabregas, for that presentation and for answering those questions. Again, we invite you to join us in November for our next series, webinar in this series on arthritis pain management. So with that, we will bid you a good day and hope to see you again.
Thank you.